Hello everyone, today is Sunday, January 3rd, 2016. This is Race for Survival at racenumber4survival.com. Hope you guys had a good holiday and New Year's. As we enter into the New Year's, just from what I saw, like I always see, the racial makeup and the demographic change when I travel to go see family, and that is always startling um, and nerve-wracking, to say the least. But the best description of it that I came up with when I was immersed in non-European Americans was a slow, steady attack. Very effective, very efficient replacement of those white people that used to live there. I watched the video of, I think his name was Jez Turner, in England, saying things that made very good sense. And the gist was to stand and fight. There's no room to retreat to. And basically said, no more white flight, stand up and fight. And I think that's a good point. On that note, this first article is from a couple months ago, but it ties in with this little news report I have for you today. 4 out of 5 migrants are not from Syria. Newsflash, like we didn't all know that. EU figures expose the lie that the majority of refugees are fleeing the war zone. The media also likes to portray them as mostly women and children. As we've covered here before, sources say that actually they're told to do this to the journalists, or they don't get paid, so there's an incentive for them to just flat out lie. In this open democracy that they call it, hundreds of migrants are sent back to Slovenia. This is not too old, from the 31st of last month. It says police have sent hundreds of migrants back to their neighboring country, Slovenia, this week, after they lied about their nationality in an apparent attempt to improve their chances of being granted asylum, police have said. It's such a joke because everybody can see that they're doing something called asylum shopping, going for the best countries, which happen to be in Northern Europe first. So, it's a big joke. Everybody's laughing at Europe, and eventually they'll be laughing at the United States if they continue to fall for this scam. The UN admits most Syrian refugees do not want to go to the West. So now another one, right? And as we've covered before, it has to do, part of it, just part of this agenda, has to do with politics. Refugees and immigrants are pawns of the left, which want to flood your polling places with immigrants or Democrat voters. And you don't have to be white to be aware of this and be against immigration. In fact, there are Mexicans in America that are against illegal immigration from Mexico, but they like to twist that. The media likes to twist and turn around what people say. Also, African people that are living in Britain, or British, quote, British people that are against immigration as well, illegal immigration and the tsunami migration of the refugee crisis. Next up, we have ISIS smugglers saying that we will use refugee crisis to infiltrate the West. So they're awaiting orders. We also remember hearing them say that they would send 500,000 people over there, basically to Europe, as migrants or refugees, in order to colonize Europe. Syrian refugee admits in Arabic documentary his goal is to Islamize Europe. This is from the 21st of last month. These other ones are a little bit older, but it's all relative to this video. Alright, so some Muslims working at a meat packing plant have quit. I guess they call it princess syndrome. I never heard of that before. But it's when a Muslim believes that they're basically a princess and entitled, and everybody has to assimilate to them, to their demands, that the whole white world change to meet their personal demands. And this is what the leftists, that's why I say where they're naive and out of touch with reality when they welcome these people, or just mass immigration. They think that all of a sudden, overnight, boom, they're going to become German, or that non-Western, non-European societies and these people that they bring in, for cheap labor, like these meatpacking plants like Cargill do here in the U.S., that they're going to be tolerant, when a lot of times they're not. The sad part too is that these companies are actually subsidized. These immigrants, so-called refugees, are actually subsidized by local communities' tax dollars to house and feed these people. So it's good for Cargill. And Cargill, they don't give a crap about these people's religious preferences. They just fire them. Look at some Mexicans. Look at somebody else in there. For them, race isn't important. It's profits. So profits over people. A left-wing Czech president says that the mass immigration agenda is an organized invasion, saying, "I am profoundly convinced that we are facing an organized invasion and not a spontaneous movement of refugees," he says in his Christmas Day message to the nation. "A large majority of illegal migrants are young men in good health and single. I wonder why these men are not taking up arms to go fight for the freedom of their countries against the Islamic State." And as the editor noted, it kind of already happened in 2015, but close enough. The blind prophet Baba Vanga predicted an invasion of Europe by Muslims. They reportedly foretold 9/11, the 2004 Boxing Day tsunami, Fukushima nuclear spill, and also the birth of ISIS. And talking about escalating threats to the Islamic State, something that I do have to point out is that I just caught an article earlier today, something about seeing a British soldier, seeing them in the battlefield taking drugs, and they have prostitutes and that. This Islamic State, they're not actually Muslims, and you'll actually see Muslims in the Middle East say this. They're mercenaries, is what they are. If they weren't getting paid by Saudi Arabia and other countries, they wouldn't be there. They wouldn't be fighting. And the fact that they haven't attacked Israel just goes to show you who also is playing a part in this Islamic State refugee racket. Because, like Israel said, they're not taking any refugees. Australian politicians admit that they wanted to turn the country Eurasian. During the 70s and 80s, some of Australia's politicians were privately talking about how they were going to make the country Eurasian. In 1983, former Foreign Minister Bill Hayden said there's already a large and growing Asian population in Australia, and it's inevitable in my view that Australia will become a Eurasian country over the next century or two. Australian Asians and Europeans will marry another, and a new race will emerge. I happen to think that's desirable. Welcome the process of gradually becoming a Eurasian-type society. We will not just become a multicultural society, which seems to be a soft sort of terminology anyway. We will become a Eurasian society and be better for it. But another Liberal minister, John Gorton, put it in more blatant words. "I think if we build up inside Australia a proportion of people without white skin, then there will be a complete lack of consciousness that is being built up, and that we will arrive at a state where we will have a multiracial country without racial tensions, and perhaps the first in the world." Then we have this article, "War on Whites," says a congressman. He says that Obama's immigration policy, it's not just Obama's immigration policy, it's the United States' immigration policy. Since at least the 60s, is race-based. And in Australia, saying that 50 to 60% of immigrants came from non-Western countries, and that was just in 2014, 2015. So, and we know what this is going to lead to, right? On track with becoming a minority white country. So this guy is an Alabama congressman, never heard of him before until now, Mo Brooks. He was responsible for the War on Whites meme, which was stormed the web in 2014. He was on a radio show, said that Obama wants to change the way America looks. Well, we all know that because Obama said that. He wants to change the face of America and change America what it is. He's talking about demographics. It says here, about Obama's immigration policy, said a lot of it has to do with skin pigmentation and religious values. He is hell-bent on doing this kind of damage to his country because he doesn't think, and I disagree, but the Judeo-Christian people who made America the greatest nation in the world history are deserving of the role that they have played in making America great. This goes back to what we were saying about the voter base. Immigration is far and away the most important problem facing America because it changes the voter pool, thereby controlling the outcome of every single public policy challenge America faces. And just backing up what we were talking about, New Year's surprise, Obama regulation is to give work permits to foreign college graduates. An executive action which directly bypasses congressional lawmakers to print up work permits for a huge number of foreign white-collar graduates every year. Also, he's trying to use executive authority to really push this gun control issue. That's what he said he was going to do in his last year of office, and that's really what he's trying to do. And David Miliband says Syrian refugees will help bring global governance. I don't know too much about this guy, but it says he's the brother of the head of the British Labour Party and the former Foreign Secretary of Britain. His father was a Marxist academic, and his mother was a communist activist from Poland. He heads one of the largest refugee resettlement charities, as they call it, in the United States, but like we've covered here, it's a huge racket, lots of money involved. He receives money from the Obama regime to bring third world refugees to the United States, and he receives a taxpayer fund salary of $600,000 for heading up this invasion. So he recently said that efforts to stop the Syrian refugees are a threat to global governance. That is because the whole point of the refugee program is to fundamentally transform the United States by changing the electorate. Again, reiterating what we're saying here, the goal is to import new voters that will elect candidates that will support international Marxism and so-called global governance. Angela Merkel of Germany appeared very, very pasty and excited to tell her people not to be divided, that this is an opportunity, this invasion, and warns against those with coldness in their hearts as backlash continues. In other words, she's facing treason charges and being called a traitor, and they could end up like Sweden, just completely collapsing, the system collapsing. She said next year is about one thing in particular, our cohesion. It's important we don't allow ourselves to be divided. So by doing this policy, by carrying out this policy, it's going to create conflict, and that's inevitable. So again, out of touch with reality. It's not so much about coldness or hatred in your hearts as it is just pure old-fashioned logic. So, but yeah, that's what she was talking about. Terror threats will be the new normal for Europe. We saw this over the holidays. Oh, shutting down this, shutting down that. And then you'll have idiots like Merkel or Holland and Cameron going out there locking arms saying, this will not be a threat to democracy. We will live on as we just shut everything down of a terror threat. But we'll keep the borders open because we're an open democratic society. When hiding from Muslim terrorists in the Bataclan, this recent terrorist attack, where 150 people were killed in France, this counselor was concerned about Islamophobia the incident would generate. So she's a local counselor for the Socialist Party. She says, even as a hostage at the back of my hiding place as she was hiding, she was thinking of her Muslim friends. They're going to get it in the head, the poor things. So, Islamophobia is going to get them as she's being attacked and people are being shot, killed by Muslims. So the editor here at Diversity Mock Phrase said, this is a good illustration of how powerful the brainwashing is. We need to grasp the almost limitless strength of the unreason that grips the mind of our ruling class. Many people delude themselves into thinking that rational arguments and evidence can change minds, but that very rarely happens. Switzerland, the Swiss army chief tells the people to arm themselves for a race war. The Swiss are pretty good about letting their citizens carry firearms. It says the threat of terror is rising. Hybrid wars are being fought around the globe. The economic outlook is gloomy, and the resulting migration flows of displaced persons and refugees have assumed unforeseen dimensions. We've heard this in Germany and other places. I love this. Immigration is voters' top concern, with 60% making the issue priority in the UK, but the Prime Minister focused on social problems such as poverty and extremism. Back to France, the beginning of the end of normal life for Muslims in France. Anti-Muslim sentiment in France is worsening, says the media after the Paris attacks. The government's supposed to control the situation and reassure the people. Doesn't seem to be doing so. And they said here, an Islamophobic attack rocked the French Mediterranean island of Corsica on Thursday night when a large angry crowd stormed a Muslim prayer room chanting hateful slogans. Around 600 people smashed glass and burned copies of the Quran. So that's what you're going to get from the mainstream media. But if you go somewhere like here, you're going to get the actual truth, which was what? The establishment media covered up what the Muslims actually said to provoke the popular revolt. Our relatives of the emergency workers are describing what was said on the evening of these protests. When they climbed up into the truck, talking about these Africans and that, according to the same source, the attackers said, filthy shit Coruscans, fuck off, this isn't your home. The "this is your home" shouted in chorus in the district by the French on Friday evening now takes on a different resonance. If it wasn't the attack on these firefighters on the 25th of December that triggered a sharp reaction from the residents, it was also the remarks made by the attackers. Just a quick headline, French nationalism is soaring despite efforts to stop it, and they are trying to stop it. Norway to turn back asylum seekers at border. To avoid the collapse of Sweden, migrants will be turned back at their border. That's why the UN is actually scolding them for doing so. Not really doing it because they're racist or far right. They're doing it because the system is collapsing. If they don't, Sweden will no longer exist. Amazon said they're going to donate profits from Pegita's anthem song to refugees. Irish nationalists spray paint immigration pushers, blood is on your hands, and anti-racists answer by saying, racists out, refugees welcome. Thank you.